Well, good morning. We meet again. I'm Andrew, and I've come to you again because I'm exploring the definitive journey of my life, and I'm discovering it piece by piece as I do this with you. So, if I ever seem like I'm not really sure what I'm talking about, bear with me because I'm on a journey of improvisational discovery, which is what life is. If something seems like it's a repetition, I don't know. You're going through something which is perhaps not authentic because every moment is new. Everything is new. We are new in every moment. It may sound like facile or cliche, but it's true. And I'm talking to you today because over last night I realized a piece that I need to talk to next, which is intent. I'm going to talk about intent to you. And this is important because I find that if ever I'm confronted by a system, I'm a cagey about the system. I've said that before, even the beautiful Vedic system. I find that I'm just like, I know that it works. I know that it's a beautiful system of knowledge, but it's like if I invest in that system, it has a hold on me somehow. I used the phrase I learned from Carlos Castaneda last time. It puts liens and mortgages on your inner being, which is to say, any growth that you go through yourself is you and the system. So it's like, is it you or is it the system? Does it matter? I don't know. I don't know. I'm cagey about Christianity. I'm cagey about Islam or Buddhism even. Every system of knowledge that ascribes to open our spiritual nature, I accept. But the moment it becomes repetitious and based on, past experience, I don't know. It makes me wary. And what I realized this morning, because I found this guy on the internet, and he's talking about yoga. I love this guy. His name's Dada. He's got a much longer name, but I don't know. I love this guy. He's got a red robe on. He's a true Hindu priest, and he's got great knowledge. I love listening to him. It's like I'm listening to a friend when I listen to him. He reminds me of a friend of mine and my friend's dad from back when I was a kid. So he's got that quality, and he's got the knowledge. You know what I mean? And as I listen to him, and I'm still like, yoga. I love yoga. I mean, if we break the mysticism of language, yoga means union. That's all that it is union. And so at the end of the day, I'm in support. I'm a fan. I want to know, I want to join, right? And yet deep down, I must admit that my personal spiritual aspiration is freedom. And I don't even know what that means. Because if I say freedom to you, then my mind is going to conjure many ideas, right? But it's like a freedom from ideas. How can that be? How can we have a freedom from ideas? That is silence. That's silence within. Stillness, I used to say. Stillness, silence. It's a spiritual state. It's what yoga is talking about. It's what Buddhism is talking about. I mean, our Western religions don't really talk about it unless you come to like Rosicrucianism or some kind of agnosticism or some kind of, very obscure cult kind of expression. Because in the West, we never talked about those things. The West is all a bit about military conquest and domination. And religion, Christianity, sad to say for the example of Jesus, has just simply become the ideology to justify violent oppression, suppression, tyranny, domination, slavery, you name it. I mean, that is the history of Western imperialism that culminated in global colonialism. And we all know what has happened there. We're all of us in North America, that's where I'm at. We're all living in the twilight of that empire, because we're living with people who are human beings just like us. The Christian ideology no longer makes us feel superior. And so we're just living with people here, like in North America, not only, not only all like the minorities who, Western civilization enslaved and brought here, but also the indigenous the indigenous native cultures here that were just dominated and destroyed and co-opted. I mean, it's just appalling to think about. And here we all are. What are we going to do next? So I mean, there's a lot to talk about there, but really today I want to talk about intent, because intent, what I understand of intent, is what makes me wary of any system. Because again, every system of knowledge, if you pursue it with authentic intent, I mean, it's going to take you there. And I come to that intangible piece where for some reason, I just, there comes a point where I just don't vibrate anymore with the system. When I see that it's just a prescribed set of routines, even though they're rituals, it's like, there's a lack of freedom there. You become invested in a system. And even though it's a choice and a volition, and it is a harnessing of your intent, it's still intent that becomes in the direction of that system. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. But for me, I'm a mystic. I'm ultimately a mystic. That's the struggle I've always had all my life, is never finding the system that made sense to me. And now I've come to a point where, like, I'm in my 50s, and there is no system for me. There's only what I can learn. And the key piece, as I've said time and time again, is love. Loving must be first. Loving was never a part of my personal journey, and therefore all that I learned was in vain. All of my life was just an endless cycle of mistakes and misery that, when I was finally set free of it, I understood as being one simple mistake, and that was a lack of authenticity and vulnerability. And again, we come back to the healing journey. It's all about traumas. It's all about the sickness in our society. It's all about, being raised by people who have no clue, how to raise you or how to help you be yourself. I'm speaking generalized, but, I'm talking about my own experience, of course. And all the things that seem to be in our way are just in the way of loving, being in love with ourselves and being in love with the life around us and the people around us. And that, for some reason, over the last number of days has led me to intent. I need to talk about intent, because that is what it's all about. These systems, any religious system, what it's doing is helping an individual tap intent. And how you tap that intent is by focusing your attention. When I was younger, my traumas and my horrible shame feelings inside had captured and sidelined my intent into this negative process that was separating me from my life and separating me from doing anything meaningful, because nothing was coming from my rising energy. It was all this mentalized stuckness. I called it being a prisoner. I was a prisoner of my own mind. I was in a prison cell, the prison cell that had been conditioned in me by my shitty upbringing. I'm not casting any blame. I made all those choices. I made the prison. I locked myself inside of it, and then wondered what was wrong when I couldn't live a life that was meaningful for me. Well, I understand that now, and I understand how the energy of intent gets sidelined, especially by our mental process. That's the problematic thing. And so this is for me the paradox of any kind of system. Is that say yoga, for example, everything that they do is they teach you rituals. It's all about rituals and initiations. You're initiated into practices. And because you're initiated, because it's secret, because it's special, your attention is captured by that. You have no doubts. You're in the hands of your teacher, your guru. You trust what they say. You're going to do what they say. You're not going to question it. You're not going to allow any doubts in your mind. You're going to allow that process to have an effect on you. And that will yield results because your attention is focused. That's what life is. Life is about attention. What are we paying attention to? What are we focusing on? And I can say that, when I was younger, I loved other people, but I didn't love myself. So that put me at a seriously dangerous disconnection when it came down to things that I was doing. Got me into bad places, bad relationships, bad work, ultimately goddamn criminal activity. You know what I mean? I didn't even aware of at the time. And it's like, was I dimly aware of it? I mean, I am ultimately, yes, but beyond the veil of my denial and my disavowal and my inability to take hold of myself. All that's in the past for me now. It is in the past, and I see it. And as a result, I'm very focused on attention, because it's our attention that makes the world. It taps us into intent, which is hard to talk about. What is intent, right? I mean, we look at the world, and our current description of the world is evolution, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, look at what we've seen of the world. We see the world changing and evolving, so we think, right? And it seems to be evolving to the apex of who we are. That's pretty amazing. I've said this the other day. Everything that's learned and lived and evolved is inside of us right now. And that's all the way from energy itself, from the creator's dreaming intent in silence, to energy, waveform, particulate universe, planets and stars, not to mention whatever the hell the dark substance of the universe is that we can't see and understand, which is most of everything that we see, and yet we don't understand it except by the effects that it has on the world of light and life that we live in. But just leaving that aside for a second, the world of planets and stars, galaxies, all that stuff, and you get closer and closer to the microcosm. It's our Earth, it's perfect proximity to the sun, and then this soap bubble thinness of viable atmosphere that we live in. We think about the Earth as our home. The only place we can live is it's the thinness of a soap bubble in circularity around the Earth. That's where we live. We live in this tiny little skin, this film of atmosphere and temperature and chemical compound. That's where we live. That's where all life has ever lived, is in that little skin. And then suddenly you've got energy and matter that suddenly begins to develop sentience. It becomes single-celled life, or protoplasm, and then single-celled life, and then the single cells become bodies, and the bodies have gone on. And we're talking about time scales of hundreds of millions of years in each epoch of evolution. And I'll speak another time about what I feel about where we are in our evolution here. But that's just a description of the world. It's a materialist description of what we can see materially around us. And in everything is intent. The intent to what? To expand. The intent towards what seems consciousness, because we're conscious as human beings, and that seems to be the thing, because we have all of evolution inside of us right now, which is shocking if you think what most people are doing with it. Here we are. We've given this gift of life, and our consciousness is the sum total of everything that's ever existed, and it's up to us to take it further in some way. What are we doing? Look at the substance of TikTok and Instagram, and this is what we're doing. You know what I mean? Look at the rampancy of mental illness and drug use in our culture. I'm speaking only of North America here, but I'm sure it's around the world, but in particular in North America, which is the very highest seat of our evolutionary process, it seems, because we got the greatest ease, the greatest largesse of resources, and yet most people are just still toiling in a kind of weird, distracted slavery. It's bizarre, really, to think of it as a context. And to get sidetracked in the negative is to get sidetracked, in the negativeness of all the crap that's going on in the world, even inside of ourselves, all this garbage and crap that's happening that we're like participating in. I myself was part of the problem for decades of my life without really even knowing it. And because of my own disconnection, I was unable to even utilize the very lessons of my enlightenment to make my own life happen, because I was stuck in my prison of the mind, So, thinking will never get you there. Thinking can't get you there unless it is drawn in and is the servant of intent. And that gets to be something that's very peculiar, and I keep on circling around it because there's almost no way to talk about it, I would say then that intent was always flowing in my life. I mean, it is. Intent is flowing in all of our lives. Everything that is alive is connected to intent. Life is intent. Life is intent. The living force to be living, to be expanding, to be the most of whatever you can be in the isness of what you are, to when you get into being, to be the most of the being that you are is intent, whatever that is. So, I mean, what is that? It's hard to talk about because it's in silence. It's what's beyond what we can think about. It's beyond what our perception is. What we perceive is the world. All of our senses are like an accumulation of the world. And here I'm using the words that Sadhguru uses. So I'm tapping into the Vedic system to a certain degree. And yet he's more of a mystic than a pure Vedic practitioner, because he himself says he doesn't practice any meditation or mantras or whatever it might be, because he's a mystic. He just had an experience, and then as he poured his knowledge out towards people, it found voice in his Vedic system, because that's, he's an Indian man. Of course, it's going to come out in the Vedas. And yet still the mysticism speaks to me as someone in North America, facing all the challenges and complexities that we're facing here, because he speaks of intent, ultimately. Intent, peace, joy, divine ecstasy. But to take the divine out of it, ecstasy, it's within. It starts in loving. My mantra, loving, healing, evolving, dreaming. This is my mantra. This is the thing I say to myself every day so that I don't forget. It's my ritual, in other words. It's my ritual. And this is what systems provide us. Ritual which captures the attention. Why does it need to be captured? Because we need to be convinced that we are God. We need to be convinced that we are energy. We need to be convinced that we can be in love with ourselves and our lives. It's the weirdest thing. It's like life seems to conspire. And by life, I mean society, seems to conspire against that. I don't know why. I don't want to get into conspiracy theories at the moment, but it does seem that like our upbringing, our society is designed to pit us against what we know to be true inside of us. For me, I know it was true. All I've ever been is a loving man and a helper and a healer, because I have needed healing, you know what I mean? And so I've always had this, right? And yet all the years of my life up until 2018, it was pretty much wasted because I was unable to break that conditioning, and I needed God to break that conditioning for me. It was too powerful for me on my own. So what my life had become was this reaching up in my music, a reaching up in my journaling, even though I was mired in shitty, problem-causing, dark, karmic, conditioned response. There was a part of me, year after year, reaching, please help me, you know what I mean? Finally it came. Didn't come as I expected. As I said to you in a previous one of these talks, God came into my life in the form of the American Department of Justice. It's crazy to me. It's just crazy to me. And I mean, if someone ever does watch this and, the entire scope of my life is on display, you can make up your own mind about it, but I've got to say that was the strangest liberation, strangest story of liberation. And yet that is what it was, because in that moment, everything was smashed. Everything that I thought was right was wrong. And everything that I had been conditioned to think was wrong was right. Bam! In an instant, everything had changed. That is what revelation is. I was given a revelation, and it came because of how stuck I was. It came in the strangest, unexpected way. Since then, my life is just a careful, step-by-step movement with intent. Intent touched me, intent set me free, and now I'm exploring it piece by piece. And this is another piece that I'm sharing with you, because I always feel a little bit strange when I'm cagey negative about systems, because systems of knowledge, we need them. Many people need them, but for me, I'm just some crazy individual, you know what I mean? I have a different path. I'm a mystic. I need a mystic experience. I need freedom, If someone is in between me and freedom, I don't want it, no matter how good it is, And so I suppose in the last couple of days, as I'm watching my Russian friend here who is talking to me about yoga, I realize that he is important, his knowledge is important, mantras and meditation and all the knowledge of the Vedas is important. And yet, if I accept that system, it's between me and my freedom, even though it's not. But yet for me it is, because I design my own mantras. I do my own spiritual singing. I am on my own journey. And this is something I think is common for people in North America, is that we're not interested in systems anymore. We don't want someone to tell us about heaven, even though it's what we all want, right? That's why drug use is rife. That's why everyone's got mental illness. It's because we're so free, and yet there's no joy anywhere. There's no joy anywhere because no one has any idea about intent. Intent which is harnessed by ritual activity. Intent is almost defined by ritual activity, because intent and ritual activity, only through ritual, it seems, are we able to have that sacred attention. And by sacred attention, I mean attention without doubts. There is no doubt. I'm telling you right now, I have zero doubt about the power of intent. I have zero doubt about the energy of creation. I have zero doubt that I am an agent of creation, as are you, as is everybody. I've got zero doubt. When I play music, I sing about it, and that opens me up. It opens me and allows that energy to flow through me. And only when it's flowing through me do I feel whole. Because as a being, I'm in an energy flow. This consciousness I have, this energy that I have, this gift that I've been given as a human being, is to expand my consciousness, is to expand my awareness, is to bring as much aliveness to every moment that I'm in. And I can say that in my experience in the field, helping people, bringing that presence to people, bringing this presence to people is very, very important, because not many people have it. So it's intangible, because ultimately we're talking about a state which can't really be talked about in the mind. If we start talking about it with our concepts and our ideas, it gets very easily co-opted into something limited and finite, a part of the material world, reduced, and then it's no longer got its magic. It's no longer sacred. How to keep the sacredness? Well, it is ritual that does it. And this is why, in the West, say, like we got very little ritual activity, and there's the church, right? But the church is bankrupt. Unfortunately, it was the vehicle of colonialism. And we can all love Jesus because Jesus is the way, right? And yet lots of people just can't accept what the church says, because the church is full of this nonsense dogma, you know what I mean? And the ritual of going every Sunday, it's like it's empty now. It's just an empty It's an empty routine rather than ritual. And you see, this is one of those things that becomes intangible. What's a ritual versus what's just a routine? It's the spirit of it. It's the intent that we bring, the intent that we connect with. I mean, what I've been singing about a lot these days is that as a living being, I'm rooted in the earth and I'm reaching up, you know what I mean? And this is resonates in me when I listen to my friend here talking about, see, I'm looking over the TV right now, I'm looking at his face because I put it on pause because I thought, I can't watch it anymore. I need to talk about this right now. My Russian friend there who is talking about the rituals of yoga, right? He's talking about reaching up, Kundalini, the chakras. This is all about moving up, right? We reach up. That's the beauty of that metaphor. We come up the spine. We reach up because as we are reaching up, divinity is coming down. God is coming down. The invisible, intangible silence is coming down. And what happens? We meet in the middle. We meet in the middle. God is always coming down. God's available, but you got to be reaching up if you want to meet in the middle. You can't just stay down. You must come up. You must come up if you want to make contact. You know what I mean? How does one do that? How does one make that happen? Well, I would say it's the importance of ritual. The problem is if you start talking about ritual, everyone's like, it's a cult, you're a cultist, something like that, you know what I mean? So we've got this problem, this disconnect in our culture where we've got traditional religious systems that no one wants because they're old and they just speak to us of domination and tyranny and the corruption of our society, right? Equally, like with Castaneda, he was accused of being a cultist, right? Because he brought a different kind of ritual into things, And yet that's, I feel, where our society is now. We need to cultivate ritual. And by ritual, I mean whatever it is that taps intent in your life, When I say ritual, I'm talking about loving, healing, evolving, dreaming. I meditate on those words. And I use them in the present tense, the ing. It's a happening thing because there is no state. There is no finished product ever when it comes to consciousness. There's only the ongoing process. If you ever think, well, that's done, I'm finished now. No, death is the only finish. And all death does is stop you in the middle of your learning process. You only learn as much as you learn until that strange transformative moment happens and you're, moved on to the next journey, whatever that is, right? So my point is that it's an ongoing thing, ongoing in every moment. It's a flow. And so loving process, it's never ending. And again, if something's in the way, healing. It's a never-ending process until you've healed your wounds. And then maybe you're loving and evolving or dreaming, you know what I mean? Like these are terms which have got a lot of meaning to me. And over time, I'll talk about them all, I hope, because I'm learning about this as it comes. But right now, it's intent that I'm talking about because it's intent that brings life. Intent is life. Intent is a living process. Intent is what set me free. Intent is what lives in everything that's alive and striving to be the most of whatever it might be. At this moment, sharing this with you here is intent being alive in me. And I'm not just a helpless, passive individual. I mean, in the end of the day, I'm nothing but a speck in infinity. And yet I am a speck which is also a little piece of light in an infinitude of light. And by reaching up, I join it. I join my light to the greater light. And something I need to say, I got to slow it down right now and say this, is that by reaching out with my own intent, it merges with the intent of the world. And at that point, there's an intelligence there. There is an intelligence in flow. Don't be afraid. Let it happen. Takes a minute, but just let it happen. Reach up, feel. And in the silence, intelligence yields. It's not intellectual, what we would call intelligence. It's not the function of the mind. It's something you see. You can see the intelligence in animals and insects and trees. You see intelligence in the sky. You feel intelligence in yourself and the function of your body. You see intelligence in how our society works, even though there's a real darkness in our society right now. And I'm not going to say anything about that right now, because right now I'm focusing on intent. That is the important thing, and everyone needs to know. It's what I needed to know all my life. I know it now. I'm devoted completely to it. And it's important, because that is the essence of spirituality. That is the essence of being realized in life, is to know that loving place inside yourself, and then to open up and lift yourself so that you become a part of it. You're always a part of it, but if your attention isn't there, you don't know. And all of that abundance and richness and quality and possibility becomes just nothing but what you think you know about it, which is only what you experienced yesterday. When I say yesterday, I mean the world of yesterdays, and there's a limitation to that, right? There just is. And I feel by saying that, I'm drawing attention to something which was definitely my own problem, but which also is the essential problem I think we face, especially in North America. And that is somehow our beautiful evolution, our evolutionary possibility, the reality that we're living a dream. This is a dream that I'm having. This is the dream that you're having. Right now, we're in the same dream, if you're listening to me, and yet our little tiny microcosmic dreams are part of this vast and infinite fabric of Creator's dream. I mean, I don't even know what I'm talking about when I say that. Creator sounds a bit churchy to me, but Spirit's dream. I like the word spirit because I have no idea what that contains. Spirit is like an abstraction that's got no ideation for me, and that's important. If I say God, I'm like, sounds religious. If I say Creator, sounds religious, sounds like some kind of nonsense old man on a cloud talk. It's nothing about that. That's all ideas. When I say spirit, I talk about everything I can't see, I can't think about, I can't sense, and yet it's here. And if I get silent and I reach up or reach out or reach down, like whatever direction your mind wants you to affix you're reaching to, that is where spirit will meet you. And it's an intangible thing, but it's ritual reaching. You've got to mean it. How do you mean what you say? It is being loving, knowing what's on the line. It's like it's your life. It's not. See, I don't want to get caught up in self-importance here. And this is another thing that I'll talk about later, I suppose, in terms of like the negative things we got to deal with, right? But saying what you mean, knowing how important that loving energy is, how important spirit is the diametrical opposite to the self-importance that exists in the mind. As you cultivate loving and all the possibilities that are included in that, as you begin connecting, as you connect to energy and realize that you're a tiny piece of an infinite dreaming existence that's beyond our comprehension, you lose that self-importance. It just doesn't matter anymore, So important, but not important. So many paradoxes when you start coming to spiritual reality. And intent is the thing. And ritual is the way that Carlos Castaneda would say, we capture our intent. That's his information from Don Juan, because Don Juan's a hunter. He's a Native American hunter, warrior, sorcerer. So for him, it's all in the metaphor of like being alive in the natural surroundings. So he looks at things like your attention has got to be trapped like an animal, which sounds bestial, but it's true. You do have to capture your attention, because otherwise it's just all over the place, right? You capture it with a ritual, and the ritual is to say, this is so important. There's something beyond me in importance that I'm committing to. For me, the moment I speak in metaphor, the moment I sing in metaphor, this is a ritual which gets my attention, and I'm free to create, and the creation enriches me and the people around me. As an example, and as like, for example, I got a friend who I always want to play music with, but he is a devotee of Hindu Vedas. He is a Hindu. He practices all the yoga and whatnot. And I know I've always known he's a special energy guy, right? But for him, he's discovered the kirtan. Kirtan is Hindu devotional singing, and so for him, as a Hindu, that is his music. So I'm always asking him to come out so we can play together, because for me, my spiritual music is my gesture of freedom, is my ritual gesture of asking Spirit to come into my life and being with me and enrich me so that I can be a river to everyone else, including myself. I want to be a beacon. I want to be a resource. I want to be a spiritual conduit in this life, and to translate that joy. And I find that when I give it, I am also feeling of it inside myself. And that's the highest feeling that I have, God, actually, is when I can see that someone's eyes are shining and they're smiling and they're happy, they're being enriched. For a moment, my ritual activity and the energy of my reaching has actually contacted someone else, and maybe they're going to go away and reach in their own lives for whatever is meaningful and true for them. This is, to me, the process of intent. When you actualize intent, it's like it is the best feeling. It is the best feeling. And I don't doubt that it's achievable in any system of knowledge if you devote yourself to it, right? As I say, it's a friend of mine, we'll probably never play music because he's always off in his kirtan, and I respect that because he's a Hindu. He's in that system. And so for me, I'm like, oh no, your freedom is limited to what kirtan says you can do, to what the Vedas says you can do. But you know what? Everyone's got to follow their own path, and it's I who can't follow that path. I need to follow my own path of freedom and my own path of how intelligence activates in my life. And it is active in my life. Intent is intelligence. And if you can get quiet inside and not listen to your mind and all the negativeness, if you can somehow understand that there's a lot of dark badness in the world, not get hung up in it, and simply be in the center of your being, you can tap that intelligence, which is intent, which is in every religious system, and yet can be obscured by the religious system itself if you're not careful, which is why I'm wary of it. So that feels to me like intent. I've said a few things about intent, and I'm always left thinking, oh, I got to say more. But that's because you ultimately can't really say much about it. It's experiential. You must experience it. And I think I've said my piece for the day. I'll be back next time. You know me. I'll be back. Hopefully you're out there. And until then, I hope you're well, and keep reaching. Keep reaching.